What does an economic D-Day look like? No one knows, but the White House wants the world to join in to topple the Iranian regime when warfare couldn't. California House Democrat Jimmy Gomez is now the target of a sexual misconduct ethics investigation. His general election opponent, Democratic socialist Angela Gonzalez-Torres, joins us. Hey, what's this? It says 300. No. That is not a reference to Spartans at Thermopylae. This is our 300th show, and for me, that's reason to celebrate and, wear a T-shirt. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. I just wanted to say Thermopylae. 300 shows. I'm proud of that. My team is proud of that. Yes, we're a daily show, so comparisons with famous scripted TV shows are imprecise or possibly utterly irrelevant. But hey, I'm telling you, a ton of work goes into each episode of The Takeout. So, for fun, let's see where we stack up with some great TV shows of the past. Keeping it in the CBS family, why don't we? 300 shows is more than the run of Blue Bloods, Hawaii Five-0, the original and the reboot, The Big Bang Theory, 2.5 Men, MASH, Murder, She Wrote, and Murphy Brown. Widening the pop culture aperture just a bit, 300 shows is more than Cheers, Frasier, Married with Children, Will and Grace, Friends, Roseanne, Modern Family, and The X-Files. As I tell all my young colleagues in this business, to thrive, you must first survive. We are surviving day by day, and we here at The Takeout thank you for coming along for the ride, wherever it may take us. Here's another number to ponder today, 40 trillion. That's America's national debt. When President Obama left office in January 2017, it was 19.9 trillion. We have more than doubled our debt in less than 10 years. 72% of that increase came during the Biden presidency. By way of comparison, in 1981, when I was still a freshman in college, no pictures available, America's national debt reached, and it scared a lot of people back then, I remember, $1 trillion. Economists tell us what matters in this conversation most is the debt to GDP ratio, essentially our debt load as compared to the size of the overall U.S. economy. Back in 1981, when the debt hit $1 trillion, that ratio was 30%. Today, it is 122%. And that means the government is paying a lot of interest to service that debt. Just how much? Well, $931 billion through July, which is up 11% from last year. Interest payments, of course, provide no services. In fact, they compete with dollars for defense, healthcare, education, immigration enforcement, infrastructure, and national parks. Recently, this debt load has driven up yields for U.S. Treasury bonds. Now, yields, that's very dense intellectual terrain. But the basic math is this. When yields on 10-year bonds go up, so do interest rates for mortgages, auto loans, credit cards. The Treasury Department this week accelerated its debt repurchases to take some pressure off those rising yields. But the positive effects wore off quickly, and that left bond markets jittery, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent at pains to explain.
There's nothing magic about the 40 trillion number, and we can grow our way out of that. So, but what we do want to signal is I think that there's been a lot of misinformation in terms of what's going on with the deficit, what's going on with the deficit to GDP.
It's always a bit daunting when government officials say markets misunderstand data. Markets are driven by data and relatively adept at seeing through smokescreens. And $40 trillion of debt and rising bond yields, well, they're clear as day. We're going to start there with our Nancy Cordes at the White House. What else did the Treasury Secretary say on this topic? And then, Nancy, will shift very quickly to the economic D-Day and Iran.
Major, I'll get to that in just a second. But first of all, congratulations on 300 episodes. And where's my T-shirt? I figure I've done at least 120 of those episodes and counting. I want a T-shirt.
You deserve a T-shirt and a blazer. We'll work on both.
Yeah, and I'll take a mug. Thank you very much. But when it comes to the debt, the administration really didn't have a ton to say today, Major. They were very focused on debt reduction, talked about it all the time at the start of their term back when DOGE was a huge priority. But there are a couple of major things that have actually added to the debt lately. First is the war in Iran, tens of billions of dollars and counting. And the second is the Supreme Court declaring that the justification that they were using to impose tariffs on countries all around the world was inappropriate. And they basically had to refund all of those tariffs, about $166 billion worth. The Treasury Secretary, you played a little bit of his sound. He also said today that, the new justification that they now have for tariffs, they are convinced is going to be lawful, and that will end up bringing more money into the Treasury in the long term. He also said that the longest term solution for the debt is a growing economy.
And what about this economic D-Day with Iran?
Yes, so they have tried military pressure on Iran. Obviously, they waged a war against Iran that's gone on for months. That was unsuccessful at pushing Iran to come to the table to negotiate over its nuclear program. So they are changing gears here, and they are trying to impose maximum economic pressure in a couple of ways. First of all, there's the blockade. That's been going on for months, preventing ships laden with oil from leaving Iran. So obviously Iran doesn't get those profits. And then the Treasury Secretary said today that they're going to be imposing all these new sanctions on countries that do business with Iran to further starve Iran's economy of funds. The problem is there's really two problems with that approach. Number one, Iran has shown in the past that it is willing to withstand years of economic pressure without buckling. And the second is that this also does a number on the U.S. economy in the form of higher gas prices, because obviously the longer that the U.S. is putting pressure on Iran and the two sides are at odds, the longer that the Strait of Hormuz remains gummed up and all of those oil tankers are not able to get to market.
With a blazer, T-shirt, and mug en route, eventually, I promise. Nancy Cordes, North Lawn of the White House. Thank you very much. I want to bring in Matt Kroenig, otherwise known as Matthew, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. He served the Department of Defense and Intelligence community under Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and during President Trump's first term. I want to play for you and our audience sound from Treasury Secretary Bessent on this particular matter and how it's important from the White House perspective for other nations to join this economic fight. Please listen.
It is time for our allies and the rest of the world to make a decision, and we are going to squash the economy of this murderous regime, which that will curtail their ability to project power through their proxies. It is a 1-2 punch. We have the blockade, and we are going to have the toughest sanctions in history. And I will tell you, this will work.
That's bullish, if it all does come to pass. I saw reports today, China's not on board. Maybe others won't be. Is this going to work?
I think it'll work to increase the economic pressure on Iran. I don't know that it's going to work to resolve the conflict and get the kind of deal President Trump wants. On working to put pressure on Iran, I think something important for your viewers to understand is when we talk about sanctioning Iran, we're not really sanctioning Iran. We're threatening to sanction the rest of the world. We essentially say China
does business with Iran.
That's right. So China, India, Turkey, if you do business with Iran, we'll sanction you. So you essentially force the rest of the world to decide, would we rather buy cheap Iranian oil and gas, or would we rather have access to the U.S. dollar, U.S. markets? And that puts countries in a difficult dilemma. And at least some of them, I think, will decide, we can't afford to lose access to the U.S. market. We are going to start at least curtailing our purchases of Iranian oil.
The president was kind of specific about things that the United States intends to target. I want to summarize them for my audience. Oil smuggling, currency swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies. Some of this, Matthew, sounds completely off the books. How do we get to it? How do we sanction something that is quite obviously in the black market?
Yeah, well, it's always a cat and mouse game with sanctions because you threaten to sanction an entity that's doing business with Iran. And often what they'll do is set up shop under another name. And so you've got to constantly...
They play dodgeball with them.
They play dodgeball. And so the U.S. Treasury has to constantly track them down and sanction these new entities.
And some of them aren't even licensed or named. They're completely off the books, utterly black market.
Yeah, that's right. And, and so viewers might be thinking, well, why haven't we been doing this all along? But as you'll remember, a few weeks ago, as part of the strategy, we were essentially allowing Iran to sell oil as part of this MOU. We thought we had a deal. Now that we realize that hasn't worked, we're saying, okay, now it's time to turn up the pressure again.
So it's been said, and I've read other places, Matthew, that if this is the new policy, we all better wait a while, because it will take a long time to implement and a long time for it to create the pincer effect on the Iran economy, and maybe even a longer time after that for it to have any political ramifications for the regime.
That's exactly right. And, I think the president still wants a deal. That's what he's said. But I think they're realizing that the conditions aren't ripe right now. The Iranian regime is not willing to make the kind of deal that we would accept. And so they're setting the table with some more pressure, let that set in. And the hope is weeks, maybe months from now, the Iranian regime says, okay, this is getting difficult. Let's go back to the negotiating table and try something different.
Prod them back to the table. Matthew Kronig, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. For analysis on North Korea, which has become very topical this week, kind of surprisingly, Victor Cha joins me now, and I'm glad he is. He is the president of Geopolitics and Foreign Policy at the Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He also serves as their Korea chair. Victor, it's good to have you with us. The president said yesterday something that had not been said before by a U.S. president, that North Korea has 57 nuclear weapons and that it's under control. How did you respond to that?
Well, it's a very specific number, 57. I can't really comment on where he got that from. When he says it's under control, I think what he's talking about, Major, is that he feels the North Korean leader has been respectful to him in the sense that they have not done a major nuclear test or major ICBM test during Trump's second term in office. They certainly did a whole bunch during the first year of his first term in office, and they did a whole bunch during the Biden administration when there were also no dialogue with North Korea. So in that sense, I think President Trump has talked about how Kim has been respectful and that he's seeking a dialogue with the North Korean leader.
And yet, they launched, that is to say North Korea, 10 short-range ballistic missiles after the president said some complimentary things about Kim Jong-un and suggested possibly a summit later this year, and also downsized scheduled military exercises with South Korea. How should we read that?
So the North Korean volley of missiles, these short-range missiles, I think were largely in response to these annual exercises that the U.S. and South Korea hold. They do this virtually every time. For President Trump, I think that's just water off his back because he's never really cared about the short-range ballistic missiles. He's always focused on the intercontinental ballistic missiles that could theoretically reach the United States. So again, I think they're both positioning to try to set up some sort of dialogue. When they talk about the fall or the end of the year, I think that's really North Korea's preference because I would imagine they want to wait till after our U.S. midterm elections, where they think they will have more leverage on the president if he does not do well or his party does not do well in those elections.
Victor, you wrote a piece in the Washington Post with this headline: Iran can't have nuclear weapons, but North Korea can. There's logic here. Help my audience see that logic.
Yeah, so the interesting thing there is the president seems to be going in opposite directions on Iran and North Korea. In the case of Iran, he said very clearly in an absolutist fashion that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And yet with the decision to cancel military exercises with South Korea, he's clearly sending a signal to North Korea that he wants to talk, even though this is a country that has scores of nuclear weapons, whether it's 50, 57, 60. They have lots of nuclear weapons, several delivery systems. And I think the president's just being pragmatic in the sense that in the case of Iran, it's a nascent program and you had a chance to take it out. In the case of North Korea, it's quite advanced. And so the realistic thing is to try to negotiate towards the goal of eventual denuclearization. But that will take a lot of time.
Take a lot of time. And in the meantime, what every U.S. president has tried to do is just contain that threat in the region as best as possible. Victor Cha, Center for Strategic and International Studies, I appreciate your time very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
The House Ethics Committee confirmed this week it is investigating sexual misconduct allegations against California Democrat Jimmy Gomez. Lawyers for an accuser say she told the panel that Gomez sexually assaulted her. The congressman denies this. He does, however, admit, quote, personal mistakes outside his marriage, but he insists those mistakes were, quoting again, consensual in nature. Angela Gonzalez-Torres is running against Gomez in California's Los Angeles-based 34th District and joins me now. It's good to have you with us. To what degree is this ethics investigation a centerpiece of your campaign against the congressman?
Yeah, first of all, I am happy to be here. I am Angela Gonzalez-Torres, as you stated. I am running to represent Los Angeles in Congress. This is something that we've come to learn in our process of working to unseat, a nearly fully funded by corporate or a representative that is nearly fully funded by corporate super PACs. That was our priority in initiating this challenge to Jimmy Gomez for his seat in Congress. And we're really focused on just winning back the House and making sure that Democratic leaders that win it are actually standing with working families and focused on policies that could improve the lives of so many workers and residents and working families across Los Angeles. And so that's our focus, and we take this very seriously as well.
So you are a Democratic socialist, as I understand it, correct?
I am. Yes, I do identify as a member of my DSALE chapter and running as a Democratic Socialist.
Understood. If you win and you come to Washington, would you vote for Hakeem Jeffries if he is in position to become the next Speaker of the House?
I think one thing we're hearing from voters across Los Angeles and across all ends of, the political spectrum right now is that Medicare for all and getting corporate money out of our politics is one of their priorities. And so I'm looking forward to having those conversations with Democratic leaders that I believe can be reflective of those priorities. And so I am having those conversations now, and we are fortunate that we are part of a slate across the country that can make sure that California has a seat at the table of this national movement toward real change that we're seeing right now.
Well, of course, the reason I ask is that he is on the record, that is to say Hakeem Jeffries, saying he does not support the agenda of Democratic Socialists of America. So I wonder if there's a disconnect from your advocacy and what you might encounter from Democratic leaders in Washington should they be in the majority.
Yeah, I do think that we will be able to get very serious about what is bare minimum for workers and residents who are counting on Democratic leaders to be firm in their stance to support universal health care and Medicare for all right now. People are really struggling. I'm working to represent a district that also includes Skid Row, parts of East LA, where people are drowning under medical debt and forced to live in their car and on the streets in tents with their whole families. That they're afraid to go see a doctor even for their child because of the cost. And I think that's unacceptable. And I think that leadership within the Democratic Party will rise to this moment and the urgency of this moment right now.
34th District is about 62.5% Hispanic or Latino identifying voters. You want to abolish ICE. What do you replace ICE with, if anything? And do you believe in any customs and border protection at all for this country?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what sets us apart in this race is I have actually worked in providing people the services that they need in terms of access to legal services, immigration services here in Los Angeles. I've visited the border between the U.S. and Mexico border and seen firsthand the conditions in which people are forced to live in. Right now, I have a younger sister who's in her lower 20s who's older than ICE. The department has the lowest approval rating in the history of its existence. And so I do think that we can invest in a government that prioritizes dignity and not detention and treats people with compassion, not cruelty right now.
Angela Gonzalez-Torres, I appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us.
Grateful to be here. Thanks.
Still to come, the FBI executes search warrants against former Congressman Eric Swalwell and seizes his electronic devices. All this related to a sexual misconduct investigation. Also, a move that has reconciliation written all over it, though that may take a while. Prince Harry and wife Meghan Markle moving back to the United Kingdom after a 6-year exile in America. Their children are to receive a proper British education and likely spend much more time with their grandfather, you know, the King of England. Plus, if you are a big deal in Washington, you have a body person, a hovering aide who meets your every need. Reggie Love was Barack Obama's in the Senate and the House, White House rather. And he's going to summarize for us life as a politician's emotional support animal. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to The Takeout. Sources tell CBS News FBI agents have searched former California Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell's D.C. home and seized his electronic devices. This related to an investigation into allegations of sexual misconduct. Now, personal controversy on Capitol Hill, well, it's become pretty common during this Congress. Let's go through a list, and it's somewhat long, so bear with me. Consider former Republican Congressman Corey Mills, defeated in Tuesday's primary, was the subject of a House Ethics Committee investigation into assaulting a woman and violating campaign finance laws. Also, former Florida Democratic Congresswoman Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, who resigned in April after being indicted for stealing federal pandemic relief funds. Also, lots of alsos here, Ohio Republican Congressman Max Miller under intense scrutiny and criticism even from Republicans for allegations of spousal abuse. Miller's former father-in-law, U.S. Senator Bernie Moreno, has called for him to resign. Then there's North Carolina Republican Congressman Chuck Edwards, who abandoned his re-election bid earlier this year after the Ethics Committee recommended censure for sexual harassment. And finally, Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez. He stepped down in April as he faced expulsion related to his affair with a staff member. Like I said, it was a long list. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins me now with more on Eric Swalwell and a federal case that broke late this afternoon in New York. I know we just have the bare bones of Swalwell. What do we know?
Yeah, what we do know is he landed in San Francisco over the weekend, and federal law enforcement seized his electronic devices. Met him at the airport. Did so without detaining him or arresting him. We are still waiting to hear from what his legal team or he will respond in reaction to this. You'll remember going back to the swirl of allegations around him. His comms team was pretty up to date and constantly responding to allegations. We have not heard anything relating to this probe.
There's a bit of a contrast there.
Especially because we already knew there was an investigation out of California. We knew there was one out of New York, both at local levels. Now, seemingly, the federal government is involved. It's unclear. Sources have told CBS News we're still pushing on this, specifically what he's being investigated for at a federal level and what the federal kind of probe is here and what they're hanging their hat on
federal crimes might be.
Why they're getting involved. At this point in time, specifically just given Monday, the White House recirculated some accusations over 10 years old now of an alleged affair he had with a Chinese intelligence officer. He was never charged in that probe, but he was investigated by the FBI.
Interesting. What happened in New York today?
Fascinating story. A woman who converted to Islam, longtime Albany, New York resident, seemingly was radicalized within the last few years, specifically around April and May of this year, when she plotted and began talking to who she thought was active ISIS members, recruiting her and encouraging her. In reality, it was human sources who were confidential FBI sources who were encouraging her kind of along the way of her journey of plotting a potential attack against the New York State House and the Albany City Hall. She was charged today in a criminal complaint of material support for ISIS. She pledged her support to ISIS in this kind of conversation she was having with people earlier this year. She met up with agents just days ago where she paid $150 for weapons to potentially go through with this attack, a gun plus bullets and magazines, plus also buying an inert bomb from these FBI agents. There's security footage of her going 5 times to the State House and State Capitol in New York to surveil it, and also going to a Home Depot to buy what she thought was equipment that could potentially have built a bomb. Federal law enforcement in a press conference today said that she had become radicalized and went from somebody who said, at least in her own words, somebody who was waving a flag after the 9/11 attacks to actually printing out photos of the 9/11 Twin Towers falling in Manhattan and cheering that on. It's certainly an interesting case in radicalization in America of what seemingly just seems like a local Albany resident, but also the seriousness of this attack. New York Governor Kathy Hochul said there was no immediate threat. Law enforcement didn't say when she was plotting this attack, but it clearly had reached a point where she had met and talked to 3 different FBI confidential human sources over the course of weeks to get going on this in more than just simply talking about propaganda on the dozens of social media accounts she had to propagandize for ISIS online.
Jake Rosen, thanks for all the details. I appreciate it. Next, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are heading back across the pond. What the couple's return might look like following years of, you know it, family drama. Always gets attention. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, moving back to the UK more than 6 years after stepping away, to put it mildly, from their roles in the royal family. They settled for a while in Montecito, California, playing second fiddle, as everyone there does, to resident Oprah. King Charles was informed of this couple's decision, we are told, on Sunday. But it couldn't have been a complete secret. Their children, Archie and Lilibet, have already been enrolled to start school in the UK in September. I want to bring in CBS News royal contributor Amanda Foreman. Amanda, I want to play a soundbite I know you're familiar with. It's from Harry's interview with BBC back in 2025. Let's listen to it.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile.
In literary circles, that would be called foreshadowing, and yet this news arrived with a thunderclap in Britain. People were really surprised based on my reading of how it's been absorbed.
Yes, the reaction in this country has been one of both extreme surprise but also great interest. I mean, this is such an ongoing soap opera, and this is just the latest twist and turn. The palace had no idea, literally, that this was going to happen. I mean, maybe one day in a few years' time, but that it was happening now, no, not at all. Britain is in the grip of a heat wave right now, and I can tell you that in Buckingham Palace, the temperature has just raised by 10 degrees.
Yes, there can't possibly be reconciliation, Harry, with his father, but what about Harry and his brother?
Harry is delusional if he thinks that there is any possibility of any kind of rapprochement or reconciliation between him and his brother, and him and his brother and his sister-in-law, Kate. That there has been it's not just bad blood, it's not just things said, it's the terrible things done which really has caused the rift. I'm told that the Prince of Wales blames the Sussexes for, I mean, you can't say, causing his wife's cancer, but certainly in every other measure being implicated in it.
And do we have a sense, Amanda, of what this might look like? They're not going to have royal duties. They're not going to be on royal property. How does this play out? Does anyone have a sense of that?
Yes, I mean, we've all been wargaming this in a way today, thinking how is this going to play out? And a few things become clear. So the first thing is that it is a disaster for the monarchy having the Sussexes back on British territory. It is lose, lose, lose. There's nothing that the Windsors, the King, the Queen, the Waleses, William and Kate can do that can accept anything defensive, because whatever they do will always be never enough. If Harry and Meghan want to stay in Buckingham Palace and they're told no, then it's a win for Harry and Meghan. Oh, those horrible, royals not letting them stay in Buckingham Palace. And whatever it is, why aren't they at Sandringham for Christmas? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? So there's an asymmetry that the monarchy has institutional power, but the Sussexes have the power of social media, public perception. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Amanda, what can Harry do?
Amanda, I'm sorry. I hate to jump in on that because I would love to talk to you much longer about wargaming the royal family, but we can't. I got to go. Thanks so much. Amanda Foreman.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Coming up, President Trump likes to emphasize speed on executive agenda items, but recently he's gone slower. Why? Well, our reporter panel has some insights to that, and we'll share them with you when we come back. Welcome back to Takeout. I love this time. Reporter panel time. Joining me now, Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Bloomberg, Matt Brown, politics reporter for the Associated Press, friends of the program both. All right, I fouled this up last night. I was supposed to tell you about Darlene Graham, note what she said about national security, and then how she tried to deal with that in the upcoming runoff in the South Carolina Senate race. Let's play Darlene Graham's 2 sound bites, and then we'll talk about it.
I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not on national security. I'm not that informed on national security, but I do support the military. Of course, Taiwan is our friend, but I think people in South Carolina are more worried about making ends meet. They're concerned about boys and girls sports.
So she was asked in the debate about China and Taiwan, specifically Taiwan, and all she came up with is, I don't know much about national security, but I support the military. And that sort of got a gasp in the audience, and there's been a lot of commentary about that afterwards. Every time I've traveled to South Carolina, even for Democratic primaries, but specifically Republican ones, I'm reminded about the national security importance of South Carolina and how it thinks about that. Was that a gaffe for Darlene? I know she's trying to characterize it as, I'm just not a polished politician, but...
Well, look, Darlene can say that she is not a polished politician. However, we can also understand that she is currently also a sitting United States senator who sits on the appropriations and budget committees during a period, I might note, when the military and its spending is going to be one of the top concerns of lawmakers.
$1.5 trillion pending request.
Yes. So this is a point that is raising a lot of questions in South Carolina and beyond, just about her ability to do the job, in addition to the questions around, is she going to be able to connect with voters on this? And it's also striking, I should say, as she's inheriting her brother's seat, who was known for his foreign policy chops here as well.
Exactly. And Jeff, the president goes there to Myrtle Beach tomorrow on Darlene Graham's behalf.
He does, and he has.
So he's laying it on the line for her.
He has put his weight behind this candidate for sure. He endorsed her right away, and he wants her, and it does reflect on him how well she does, or how well she does.
Challenged by Ralph Norman,
exactly,
sitting member of Congress.
I think, and to whether or not it's a gaffe, it also raises questions about whether or not she got briefed. I mean, anyone who's going into a debate, no doubt, would have some kind of briefing and preparation on both domestic and foreign policy. That doesn't mean that to some voters it might come off positively when you say, I'm not a politician. And yet when you answer a pretty straightforward foreign policy question,
and it wasn't a gotcha. This wasn't about 3 layers of Pakistan versus India. This is Taiwan, China, which is right next to Iran in terms of priorities for the Pentagon and ongoing concerns of any administration, Republican or Democrat.
Absolutely. It's something that you would want to be prepared for at a debate.
You wrote about Trump time.
Yeah.
Which, having you and I both covered this White House, you know what it means. Super accelerated, always pushing, always aggressive. Get it done yesterday. But now that's getting dialed back a little bit.
Getting dialed back on a couple issues. What I wrote about was, the first year and a half of this second term, he has just powered through, especially that first year. Everything from, recasting tariffs and trade policy to international relationships to tearing down the East Wing. But when you look now at one of his biggest foreign policy challenges, which is the war, he's basically put it on pause. He did the same thing with the tariffs on Canada just a couple days ago. So it's an interesting shift in dynamic for him and for somebody who likes to get things done quickly.
And it deals on the legislative side because his only priority is the SAVE Act and doesn't essentially engage with Congress on anything else. That is slowing things down there as well.
Well, much of the frustration of congressional Republicans behind closed doors is, as we consistently hear, they are very focused on trying to connect with voters out on the campaign trail this month of August recess. They're very focused on trying to promote that we hear you, we see you when it comes to the economy and other issues. Yes, but with the president's attention focused on transformation of Washington, D.C. through certain monuments and projects like the ballroom or the war in Iran, his focus is elsewhere, and he's not interested in promoting what could be done on a lot of issues like the economy, and that's been a very great frustration for some congressional Republicans.
You know this White House and the Hill very well. A lot of focus on Caroline Leavitt leaving. I think it's as important, if not more important, than James Braid is leaving, head of legislative affairs, the #1 White House outreach to Capitol Hill. He's leaving. It's not a scandal. A lot of people leave about this time. but that's going to leave this White House down a person of significance.
For sure. I mean, it's also beginning to look like a trend. You've got high-profile people leaving the White House, leaving Trump's administration before the midterms, not waiting it out.
Not waiting until after. Usually it happens after.
That's right.
But they
There's
sense the
almost
verdict coming.
always an exodus after. So that would not be unusual. This is unusual, and they are both heavyweights. I mean, I would argue that Caroline Leavitt, again, sometimes talking about a press secretary seems sort of silly for a bunch of reporters, but she was more than that in this White House. She was absolutely an advisor, and she was in the room, and so was he.
Matt, you got 25 seconds on this.
I think that it's notable for characters like Caroline, who are very close to the president's demeanor, personality, and just understand him, for them to be out of the room, especially at a moment when he's dealing with something like the war in Iran, where a lot of people don't have an ability to read him. So that's going to be very important for both the Hill and even just inside the White House itself.
Yeah, and whatever comes of the elections, there will be a lame duck Congress, and they will have to get it done at the White House without this person who knows the Hill better than anyone else in the West Wing. Jeff Mason, Matt Brown, always appreciate it. Thanks so very much. Coming up, we say goodbye to a beloved member of the Takeout family, our red chairs. We bid them a very fond farewell. We'll do it in English this time, next, when we come back. Welcome back to the Takeout and to the other side of the conversation corner. What if you had an assistant, babysitter, lunch companion, scheduler, and friend, all in one person? Well, lawmakers have that. They're called body people. Notice That's News of the U.S. recently took a look at young staffers on Capitol Hill who do this very, very interesting and highly specialized job. This week, I spoke with Reggie Love, who served as body man for former Senator and then President Obama, doing so from 2007 to 2011. Here's some of that conversation. Let's talk about the life of a body person. Mostly men, but not exclusively. What's it like? How good is it? How tough is it, Reggie?
Look, well, first, Major, thanks for having me. Yeah. And look, I always say, people are like, it's such a hard job. And for me, I grew up in sports. I grew up playing football. And I said, it's really hard, but like when I wake up, like my head's not ringing, my foot doesn't hurt. Right. It's a long day, but like physically, no physical abuse in most roles.
Mm-hmm. Is it emotionally difficult, taxing?
Yeah, it is. It's emotionally difficult because oftentimes you're on an island, and meaning that it's you and your principal, and you know you want to protect your principal, but you want to also deliver for all the people around the principal that are trying to create like some sort of meaningful outcome, you know.
And for your life, that meant Barack Obama.
And that meant Barack Obama. And look, I think the beauty of the job is that you have an opportunity to learn and grow as the candidate grows themselves, right? And so, you know, I think about when I moved to D.C., Barack Obama was in the Senate. He was the 99th senator. Right. And so you look at that trajectory where you're the 99th senator, and 3 years later, you are
the president of the United States.
The president of the United States. So, I mean, talk about, you know, accelerated growth. It should be, you know, if you were in someone's VC fund, you'd be the best performing company in the portfolio's history. So,
right. So let me describe things that have been attributed to this job, and you tell me if they're true. Valet.
Yes.
Scheduler.
Schedule executioner.
There you go. Which is different than the person who puts the schedule together, but you make it work.
Yes.
Traffic cop.
Yes.
Emotional support animal.
100%.
Babysitter.
You can't use that word, but yes.
Have you ever walked a dog or shopped for groceries?
I have shopped for groceries.
Okay. Picked up dry cleaning.
Hotel dry cleaning doesn't. I don't know if that counts.
Probably not.
Doesn't count. Maybe it doesn't. Like, can you get this turned around in 24 hours?
Right. And the emotional support animal part of it. What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Look, I actually kind of enjoyed that element to a degree because the days are long, and oftentimes the days are repetitive and filled with a lot of very hard tasks. Asking people for their vote, asking people for money, asking people for their support, convincing people that they should do all of those things over and over again. And one of the things I really enjoyed was, at the beginning of the day, I'd be like, all right, it's a long day, but you know what? You're going to see a friend from Punahou, or you're gonna catch the second half of a basketball game, or finding like the parts of the day that were a little light and easy.
Provide a little release.
Exactly, a little release. And so that was always fun, and except for the days where you couldn't find it.
So a lot of people who think about the body person think of the TV show Veep, and they think of Gary. Close? Not close?
Yeah, I mean, you had Veep. Obviously you had West Wing.
Yep.
Gary probably was a little funnier.
Right.
Than Charlie.
Right. Got more abuse for sure.
Got more abuse for definite. But I also think that the way that he plays the role is a pretty, it's pretty accurate in the sense of trying to be kind of one step ahead and one step behind.
Look around every corner that you can think of.
Yeah. And I think the way he does it with humor is also helpful,
How much is discretion a part of this job? Is it an imperative you've got to keep all this stuff inside?
Look, I think, yes, I think there's a whole host of things that are off the record all the time. Right. And then there's a whole host of times in which you're kind of like a roving ambassador or representative of the principal, right? And those two things can sort of be one and the same at the same time.
You can listen to my full interview with Reggie Love on your favorite podcast platform. When we launched this show, I told you we would regard this set as our work apartment. An apartment, as you know, is a space someone else owns, but that you inhabit and decorate to your liking. And so I have. There's the famous golden Takeout tie rack and the charming retro tabletop jukebox. And I also bought the bar that is now the much fancied and talked about all over town, Takeout Tavern. But there's one thing in this apartment that I inherited, these red chairs. And they, like this show, are delightfully unpretentious. But there is a season for all things, and it is now time to say goodbye. And before we do so, a fond farewell to our beloved chairs. I'm not the best cinematographer in the world, but as anyone can plainly see, the chairs they are a-wearing. And why not? They have been with CBS since 2018 when they were part of the Face the Nation set, sturdily supporting top political figures of that time, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Mike Pence, and the late Lindsey Graham. In 2019, Face the Nation moved into a fancy new set, and the red chairs, well, they did not make the cut. They were relegated to basement interview rooms, still part of the family, but only just. They lived a useful life, though, as stagehands took them for their own purposes. One found its way into a home gym, another into a union hall, still another on a back porch in suburban Virginia. We gathered the chairs back up as placeholders when we were preparing to launch the Takeout. I was told new chairs were on order, but one look at these beauties and I was hooked. They have served us well. Newt Gingrich, Norah O'Donnell, retired General Frank McKenzie, White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro, and the legend himself, Bill Nye the Science Guy. But time, as ever, has taken a toll. The legs have grown a bit wobbly, the fabric edges closer to shabby than rustic chic. But do not worry. The stagehands who gave these chairs a good home will reclaim them for sedentary glories yet to be imagined. I promise you will never see the chairs like this. So here's the big reveal, everyone. Check them out. Aren't they beautiful? Super sturdy, really comfy, have a great diner vibe. I love them. I'm decorating my apartment. My DC crew, come and join me. Come and join me. This is our 300th episode. You're part of it. We're all part of it. We're all happy to say that. Remember, everyone, Happy Thursday. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably simple, occasionally clever with streamers.